on a weathered copper globe from the early 1500s. The uncharted waters near Southeast Asia bore a chilling label, "Here be dragons." Though this exact phrase was rare, the fear it embodied consumed medieval European mapmakers. They filled blank spaces on their maps with sea serpents, whirlpools, and monsters, transforming ignorance into mythology. These creatures guarded the edges of a world still largely unknown to them. For millennia, global civilizations crafted two kinds of maps: practical guides for trade routes, coastlines, and settlements, and cosmographies, celestial maps blending Earth with the cosmos, gods, and myths. From 800 1650 CE, Eurasian and North African cartographers fused these traditions. Commissioned by kings and caliphs, these maps projected power and philosophy, not navigational accuracy. They were hypotheses of a half-seen world, vulnerable to spectacular errors. And in Europe, the greatest of these experiments began with the mappamundi. Medieval European mappamundi followed a rigid T-O design. Earth's lands formed a T-shape, Asia top, Europe, Africa below, encircled by an ocean. Jerusalem sat at the center, Eden at the edge. Islamic scholars adopted this format but prioritized geography over fantasy. The 10th century traveler Ibn Hakel, not Hakel, revolutionized it. His maps, based on journeys from Spain to the Indus Valley, erased monsters for mountains and trade cities. Yet even he couldn't escape the limits of his era. His Africa bled into a phantom southern continent. In 1138, Norman King Roger II of Sicily commissioned Muslim geographer al-Idrisi for an unprecedented project, Tabula Rogeriana, the Book of Pleasant Journeys. For 15 years, Idrisi synthesized Greek, Arab, and Viking knowledge with interviews of traders. His 1154 masterpiece depicted a flattened sphere, stunningly accurate for rivers and mountains from France to Korea. But critical flaws endured. He stretched Africa to wrap around Earth's base, and shrank the Indian Ocean to a lake. Still, it remained Europe's most reliable map for 300 years. Meanwhile, China charted its own path. In 1389, China's Ming dynasty unveiled the Da-Ming Hun Yi II, a room-sized silk map of unprecedented scale. Using Mongol-era surveys and Arab sailor accounts, it achieved the impossible, a recognizably modern outline of Africa, including the Horn and southern coast. This 17-foot marvel placed China at the center, but acknowledged African kingdoms like Mali. Yet gaps persisted. Australia and the Americas remained absent. Half a world away, Europe's age of discovery was about to redraw the globe with breathtaking inaccuracies. In 1507, German cartographer Martin Waldseemlle printed a map that christened the New World, America, after explorer Amerigo Vespucci. His vision was revolutionary, yet deeply flawed. He depicted the Americas as a sliver-thin landmass disconnected from Asia. Just decades later, Spanish expeditions mapped Baja California and triggered a colossal error. Conquistadors, deceived by the Gulf of California's narrowness, declared it an island. For 163 years, maps showed California Island, adrift in the Pacific, a myth even Galileo cited. Flemish genius Gerardus Mercator's 1569 world map revolutionized navigation with straight, wrong lines. But his 1595 Arctic map veered into fantasy. He depicted the North Pole as a massive black mountain, Rups Nigra, circled by a whirlpool and four mythical islands. This explained compasses, he claimed. The mountain's magnetism pulled needles north. Though based on garbled Viking sagas, it became dogma. Even as explorers debunked sea monsters, the Arctic's terra incognita invited scientific myth-making. By 1657, English scholar Peter Heylin, not Halen, still dismissed Australia as utopia or fairyland. But these unknown lands were never empty. When Europeans mapped coasts, they erased indigenous nations, like the Inuit in Mercator's Arctic or California's Kume people. The dragons weren't real, the people were. Mapmakers labeled territories terra nullius, nobodis land, enabling colonial seizures. In Australia, Aboriginal songlines, oral maps 60,000 years old, were ignored. In the Americas, Aztec and Inca cartography burned. The greatest monsters weren't in the seas, they were in the margins. Every world map today remains fundamentally wrong. Why? Projecting a sphere onto flat paper warps reality. Mercator's famous 1569 map inflates Greenland to Africa's size. It's 1/14 as large, and shrinks the tropics. Modern alternatives like the Peters Equal Area map fix size distortions, but stretch continents into alien shapes. Satellites map coastlines within centimeters, yet we still distort Earth to fit agendas. Some maps center on Europe, others the Pacific. Some enlarge military bases, others hide borders. Cartography is still less about truth than perspective. The dragons never existed, but the fear they symbolized was real. Filling blanks with monsters was easier than admitting ignorance. Today's terra incognita is subtler: deep oceans, political biases, algorithmic voids and digital maps. Yet the core struggle endures: how to map a world too vast, too fluid for paper or pixels. We've swapped sea serpents for surveillance satellites, but the quest remains. From Ibn Hawkins Inc. to Google Earth, maps are human stories of curiosity, power, and imagination colliding with an uncontainable planet. They remind us, every line we draw is a hypothesis, every border, a choice, and beyond the edges of our certainty, there will always be dragons of our own making.